Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be showing you a project using Finest. It's a new floral stamp by Penny Black, and you know they do florals so beautifully. Here is the stamp. It's a full flower with some buds. And then I'm using one of their best sentiment stamp sets, which is Delightful Day, and Spellbinder's Essential Arches. I'll also be using some cold press watercolor paper today. You can use hot press, of course, but I thought cold press with the texture would be good. This is a 9 by 12 piece. When I cut it in quarters, it'll be 4.5 by 6. And that's where I have a card base made from alabaster from Spellbinders to match that size. And then you'll need some foam, either some strips or foam sheet. So here is the card base and the panel. It's 4.5 by 6. And then I'll be using a few Concord and Ninth colors: nectar, honeysuckle, wildberry, artichoke, and lemongrass. And I just picked out a couple of Tombow pens that I may want to use. So I have mounted the stamp slightly to the right in my stamp positioner along with my paper. Now this kind of stamp, it's a rubber stamp, a rubber cling stamp, and it has an unusual quality to it. You're not stamping the outline, you're stamping, you're kind of stamping and painting the flower all at the same time. So I started out with the nectar and I went all over the blossoms. And now it looks like I'm going all over everything. It seems like the whole pad is over it, but I'm just using the corners. And I put some lemongrass on those leaves. And I've used a little bit of honeysuckle. And I'm going to spritz it with this mister. The Spellbinders mister is a very fine mister, which I like a lot because it just gives that fine mist, not any big dots of water. And you can see already this floral spray coming to life. Now again, I'm just using the corner. It's hard for you to tell, but I'm using honeysuckle. And then I'm going to take a green Tombow pen, and I'm just going to do the stems and maybe a little bit of shading. That's where the Tombow pens or any watercolor marker really come in handy, because they can get into those small areas. Then I'm using artichoke for a little bit more shading. And then wildberry just at the base of these buds and in the center of the flower. Again, I'm just using the corner so that I can kind of direct the color, and I'm just using my finger to blend it out. And then I'm going to spritz it one more time, and it's just a light spritz. The spritz goes on for quite a ways, but I pull that away. I don't spritz it the entire time that the mister is spraying. Now I'm using a damp brush, very little water. I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. The paint, because this is cold press watercolor paper. It's a little rougher texture than hot press, and even then you might want to use a paintbrush. I want to add dab off a little bit of that moisture and stamp it again, and I'm going to use some of this nectar again. You can see it's virtually done now. The trick to these kinds of stamps is don't overwork it. It really, when you're stamping, it's really kind of painting it at the same time. So you just need to add little bits of color. I don't want to overwork it. I have a tendency to keep fiddling like I'm doing now, and I do want to smooth it out a little bit, but I really want to urge you to try to stop earlier. I have a hard time stopping earlier. In fact, I wished I had made these flowers a little bit lighter, but they're fine the way they are. I actually like intensity of color. So now I want to have a little bit more in the base and in the center of the flower. So I've smushed some of that wild berry onto my work surface, and with a paintbrush added some, and then added more nectar. We're just going to add a touch more of this dark. And then I am going to take take it out of my stamp positioner, and I'm going to get one of my arches and that fits this, and I'm going to just kind of tape it in place. Not ready to cut it yet, but I'm going to tape it in place. I'm using the Spellbinders crafting tape because it never tears if I don't rip it too quickly, and I love that. So I chose one of these sentiments from the Delightful Day sentiment stamp set. I've got a piece of acetate that I'm putting over the area I'm going to be stamping. I'm doing this because I just want to test out. We're going to stamp the sentiment, and I want to test out that it's straight and in the right position. So I'm kind of taping down the acetate so it doesn't move. I have a plastic grid that I use. I think they use this a lot for quilting, but I just cut it into a smaller size to fit into my stamp positioner, and I use it a lot for making sure that my sentiment is straight. So I've stamped it. I'm stamping it now onto the acetate and taking a look at it. I use Shady Lane, which is a VersaFine Clair waterproof ink, which I love because it's very crisp. And so I actually think I got this the first time, which is rare. And so I can gently peel off the acetate and now stamp it for real. And I'm just inking this very lightly because I don't want to put too much ink on that, because and then I'm just kind of kissing the paper. I don't want it to get kind of globby or fill in some of those letters. Now, I still have that arch. I've now cut it out, and I'm just peeling that off. And you can see this is what I'm left with. You can see that it cut off a little bit of the flower. That's actually what I wanted. So that's going to work out. Now I take my card base. I'm going to take that outside frame, and I'm going to glue it to the front of my card base. I'm using that Dana Kirby turned me on to that Art Institute glue. I love this glue, and so and it has a little fine point, which really makes it nice when you're using need to get it into, again, small or thin areas. Now I'm going to color the edge with gold. Now I'm using a gold leafing pen, which gives you a beautiful it's a shaky pen, and it gives you a beautiful gold leaf color. You can use gold paint. You can also use another gold marker or an ink pad for this. But I find I have a lot more control with this marker, and I'm just going around these edges. You do have to prime it every so often. You want to keep it fairly moist. And now I'm going to go over the edges on the inside of this carefully. And I find that if you hold this pen, if you are using a pen like this, to holding it completely upright really helps instead of at an angle. And you just want to take your time and be real careful. Doesn't matter if you get it on the inside more, but you don't want to get it on the outside. And now it just gives a very subtle rim. I'm going to add a little bit more on that rim. You can see I have it at an angle, so it shows up a little bit more. And if you miss and get a little bit where you don't want it, don't worry. You can use like I did, you can use a sand eraser and just sand off some of that color. Sand eraser is my best friend because I often have to use it. Now using nectar and a ink dauber, very, very lightly adding some color. So it seems like that I'm kind of really bearing down, but I'm not. It's just a very light touch because I just want a hint of color. And so it's easier to put more on than it is to take some off. So I go quite gingerly. I'm using a very, very light touch. I'm going to just add a little bit more. I always have to fiddle with the color. And then when I think that I'm happy with it, I'm going to take my ink away and I'm going to cut out a piece. I'm using foam sheet. Like I say, you can use foam strips. This is quite thin foam sheet, so it doesn't pop up quite high. It's quite subtle. You can go either way, but I just used that arch die to be able to cut around it and then cut it a little bit smaller so that it doesn't show on the edges. I'm just going to glue this to the back of the center. Then I'm going to take some very thin twine. This is a natural color, and I'm going to just I need to fiddle a little bit. There's a little spot there, so I use my sand eraser. And now I'm going to tie on this little bit of very thin twine or string. And you can use any color you'd like. And that's the other nice thing. You can have, make this flower any color scheme that you happen to like. I'll actually show you another one in just a minute that I did earlier. And so I've trimmed that off. Now I'm going to glue this in place. And once it's glued in place, that's really going to complete my card. And so you have this beautiful card that I think people will be totally wowed by, your recipient, but you haven't spent a ton of time on it, which I think is wonderful. So I just use my sand eraser to get anything that, any little spots that may be on my card so that I can make sure it's all nice and pristine. So there it is. You can see just that little bit of a pop-up and the little gold rim. I didn't want it to scream at you. Now, like as I promised, I had made one earlier. This one is out of white cardstock. I used buttercup and clementine and the same artichoke and lemongrass. But here, let's take a look at a close-up of the pink. And you can see, I just think that their Penny Black's florals are always so, so beautiful. And it just so easy to create a lovely card. This is my yellow version. Like I said, I use buttercup and clementine, lemongrass, and artichoke. The same sort of colors. I used the same sentiment. You can see I put it down lower. I decided that up higher was better. And then now I just want to review with you. I use Finest as the stamp, and then Delightful Day and Spellbinder's Essential Arches. Not too many products at all and not too many colors, so it's an easy thing to do. I hope you give it a try, and I also hope I see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.